Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Um, I'd like to start by saying that we at Trimble are very proud to be associated with the CyArk group, with the work that the great work that they do around the world, preserving and documenting cultural sites, a lot of great significance to human history, and in particular this conference, because it's evolved to become a forum that brings together professionals, academics, and enthusiasts with an interest in preserving global sites. Affords us an opportunity to exchange ideas, to learn best practices in leveraging technology to preserve the world's cultural heritage. I'll be speaking to you today about a theme of a project that's a collaboration between the CyArk group and Trimble on documenting the transatlantic slave trade. Trimble is arguably the world's leading provider of innovative, position-centric solutions using a broad range of sensors, inertia, GPS, optics, and application-specific software that find use in a myriad of enterprises, not limited to construction, agriculture, public safety, land administration, as well as asset management. The partnership that I'm announcing today between the CyArk group and Trimble, on the Trimble side, is spearheaded by a group within the Trimble Buildings Division. That's the SketchUp group. And by the way, if you're interested in creating intuitive 3D content, then grab your copy of the SketchUp software. This collaboration was rekindled following a trip that two of my colleagues who work within the SketchUp group did to London to participate in the recent past conference that was held by the CyArk group. It was just a convergence of interest. CyArk, with their global ambition of documenting sites around the world, and Trimble's unflinching commitment of providing the technology to enable the capture and preservation of such sites. So one may ask, why should Trimble be interested in a project team like the transatlantic trade? As a public company, we recognize that our stakeholders come from diverse backgrounds. Our shareholders, our employees, and our customers come from different countries around the world and have different cultures. They provide us the resources and the talents that enables us to create products that are transforming industries in almost every facet of human endeavor. And for us, it's that unity of purpose that our stakeholders provide us as a company that's responsible for our success. And we believe that a documentation of this team, this project will provide the products that would create an opportunity for dissemination of information pertaining to the slave trade that will bring about enlightenment that would enable us leverage the common values that underpin our humanity for a shared future. There is no doubt that the slave trade definitely represents one of the darkest periods in human civilization. And this project team will create, because it's a digital preservation, a lasting record So it's something that will be preserved. In line with the theme of the conference, the eventual products will be disseminated for free, but in a unique, interactive manner. And we will develop the documentation and information in accordance with national curriculum standards so that it becomes a resource for education, training, and will complement ongoing research on the subject matter. Because the sites and because the trade was so extensive and involved several continents, in order for us to achieve our goal, we will have to build and leverage partnerships across the world. And in the process, we will be able to transfer knowledge and skills to the countries in West Africa and in the Americas, particularly South and along the Caribbean, who will participate in this project. So it provides an opportunity for, skills transfer and building capacity and an interest in digital preservation. Yes, and the harrowing part of the theme is the reality that people were captured against their will in their millions and transferred into a life of forced labor within the Western Hemisphere. But the trade was so extensive that we chose to confine the theme of this particular project to that portion of the larger trade between West Africa and the Americas, generally the New World. So we will focus on sites along West Africa that were active in the slave trade, and then the maritime routes that emanated from West Africa towards the Americas, the Caribbeans, and eventually the United States. It definitely created disruption, and even though slavery was abolished many years ago, you would agree with me that we still contend with its adverse effects. It's been the underpinning of several stereotypes and prejudices that tend to divide us and limit what we can do working together. The current president of the United States, President Obama, who himself an African American, and his wife, a descendant of a slave, had the privilege during a state visit to Senegal to visit one of the very important relics of the transatlantic slave trade, the Gorée Island in Senegal. And it's really thought-provoking that after that harrowing experience, the First Lady captured her feelings in a very poignant remark, stressing that we do not need to dwell on the past tragedies that divide us, but we will definitely have to learn lessons from the past in order that we could build a shared common future for all mankind. So it's for us in Trimble, our interest really is that we will be able then to share this information that will provide the enlightenment that will enable us achieve the goals that I talked about. So major components, because the slave trade then consisted of a number of phases. And there were so many competing sites. Given the constraint of resources and time, we had to then select which of the sites we were going to preserve, which the sites that were going to be part of the entire project team. The trade itself was broken up into distinct phases. So there was a phase of capture where slaves were captured, and then the slave caravan had to travel to sites of confinement. And then from the sites of confinement, then the slaves then were transported to where they would begin their life of labor, either in the Caribbean, South America, or in the New World. And then in the New World, there was the struggle and the movement for freedom and abolition. So these are all distinct phases, and we had to select sites in each of these phases to tell the story. So, there were factors like eminent risk to the site, the cultural significance, what that site meant to the people in that region. So we consider that in selecting the sites that we intend to study and document. And a very important feature that thrills me about this entire project is the fact that instead of just documenting discrete sites, we are pursuing innovation by putting all this material or making it available on a unique, very interactive, intuitive web interface that allows you to see the role of all these different discrete sites and how they connect into the transatlantic slave trade over a timeline. So you can literally see which sites were active and what roles they played, rather than just a discrete digital preservation of sites. So it tells the whole story, and this is very unique, and I think will make an invaluable contribution to the approach in which information is shared. So for the sites of capture, this is the Salaga market. Just for your information, I'm from Ghana, and the Salaga market, the Salaga slave market isn't too far from my home village, which is south of it. But this was very important, and this was selected because it was the largest known trading market for slaves. So caravans will come from the neighboring regions, modern-day Burkina Faso, Nigeria, and this was the convergence point where traders allegedly bartered their slaves in exchange for gold, ivory, and other raw materials. So that was the commencement point of the journey into the New World. The Osu Castle, built by the Danes approximately 200 years ago, was by the turn of the 15th century, the west coast of Africa had a litany of forts built by European powers who were in search of gold and other minerals. But this soon, I would say not transformed, disintegrated into the capture and the forced shipment of slaves across the Atlantic. So you would see that most of the sites, the sites of confinement have extensive network of dungeons that reveals, when you do a tour, reveals the depth of cruelty that these slaves had to endure, and the agonies are perpetually inscribed in the walls of these dungeons. So the Osu Castle was built by the Danes, used for trading, eventually for slave trade, participated in the slave trade, became the seat of the colonial masters, Britain, for a while, and then the independent Ghana until recently. It was the seat of the government of Ghana. So Cape Coast is also another site we're considering as part of the team to study. And Cape Coast Castle was built by the Swiss African Trading Company, mainly for trading timber, but it also evolved over time to become a slave trading post, had extensive dungeons. And this was also a site that Barack Obama visited when he visited Ghana. So these are the sites of capture that we selected as initially part of this project team. So then we come to the next phase, which is after the capture, confinement, and transfer, the slaves who were lucky made the Middle Passage and eventually arrived. So then they arrived at these plantations. And the Anabec sugar plantation, the U.S. Virgin Islands, is a U.S. National Historic Place and provides us a glimpse into how these plantations were organized and into the life of the slaves who worked on the plantation. It was also very noted for production of sugar and molasses towards the end of the 19th century. And this is definitely, in a chronological order, a very important component, which is the triumph of good over evil, where these sites that played a critical role in the struggle for abolition and ending slavery, as it were. Fort Moron here in Virginia, which is essentially based on the doctrine of General Butler. It's good to know we had good people who created a safe haven for slaves who were able to escape from the rebellious states and cross Union lines into safety. So this site has become one of the latest U.S. national parks, and it was, by the turn of 1865, had a thriving community of self-contained blacks. The benefits I have alluded to in the course of my presentation are enormous. But what comes to mind is we will have, at the end of it, an accurate record would further enhance and complement existing research and our own understanding of this historic phenomena. And the fact that we will build a portal that would provide unique information about the role of all these discrete sites, how they are interconnected to one another, with an ample lot of information will provide a unique way of democratizing cultural heritage and telling the story in a novel manner. So to start off with, we selected one of the sites here in the U.S., Natchez. And Natchez is of historical relevance to the slave trade team because it was the region in the United States that had the second largest amount of enslaved labor. By 1865, it had about 350 plantations, and over each of those plantations were estimated to have in excess of 250 enslaved labor. So it's of historical relevance, and it's an integral part of the account of the African American history. But the sites that we capture are mainly the Melrose Estate in Natchez, Mississippi, and the Melrose Estate rally was actually the building of a slave owner. So it gives us a glimpse into, besides life on the plantations, how the slaves that who lived with the slave masters and had to provide the services on the estates of the slave owners, how that life looked like. And another important character in the Natchez, in one of the sites that we captured, is William Johnson, because he was a misnomer, because at the time, even though slavery wasn't abolished, he was a colored person who had freedom. And he was able to develop a prosperous business, as evidenced by the estates that he left behind, which was very contrary to the prejudice of the time. It was so tragic that he lost his life in a contest over property, but his killing wasn't considered murder because he was a person of color. Nonetheless, he kept a very accurate record of the events, and therefore now it's considered a museum of African history with a lot of artifacts and an ample lot of information. So this shows you the team from CyArk and Trimble that collaborated in executing this first site, in capturing all the data. Top left, you can see the Trimble Spatial Station, total station, as well as revolutionary GNSS imaging rover, V10, was used to capture panoramic images of the sites. We also used the TX8 scanner to collect point cloud data. We also took high resolution photography of both the interior and exterior of the buildings. That's the slave master homes as well as the slave quarters, adjoining slave quarters as well. We also interviewed the curator, the superintendent, and other prominent people who had information pertaining to the site. So this is just to show you a sample of the work. This shows the point cloud. This is of the 3D point cloud for color point cloud for the William Johnson property. So it shows you the main building and an outhouse. So we're in the process of putting and collating all the data we collected. But this shows you eventually what some of these things will look like. So this is just a still snapshot of the William Johnson property. It's a color 3D point cloud. This shows the interior. So we selected some of the rooms, and you can tell he was an avid hunter. He's got his shotgun there on the table, and he kept very good records, which was also an indication that he knew how to read and write. And this is his room with the gun that I talked about. And this is the most interesting part of it. This will be the final product when it's all said and done. So we will create this portal, and it would provide the interaction, and it will be the source for the dissemination. So on top, you see the timeline over the lifespan of the slave trade. And then once you drag that slide bar over time, it tells you which of the routes and which of the sites were active. And when you click on a specific site, that gives you all the detailed information, 3D models, color point clouds, still pictures, high resolution still pictures, historical facts, audio files, fly-throughs, expert interviews. And I think this is a very unique concept. And the fact that this is available online worldwide for the use of an education, and I call it enlightenment of mankind, would help us overcome the adverse impact and mitigate, indeed, the adverse impact of an undeniable part of human history. So we still have more sites that the project intends to undertake expeditions to. So we have got Benin, Juasao, Bavista, or I call it Fort Ajuda. It's very important because it's estimated that 20% of the slaves came from there. And it's got a museum with artifacts that attest to its role in the slave trade. We've got Gambia, Fort Kunta Kinte. That's the nickname of one of my close friends, Kunta Kinte. And that's also an island that has a lot of relics. Extensive slave quarters is a testimony to its role in this evil trade. And I talked about the sites in Ghana, the Elimina Castle, which is one of the very first castles to be built along the West Coast, and its role in the slave trade, its infamous role is common knowledge. In Senegal, the Gorée Island that President Obama and his wife had the privilege to visit. And here in the United States, the Evergreen Plantation, U.S. Virgin Island, the Fort Moron. So there's still a lot more work to be done. And this is where I beseech your support. It could either be your domain expertise on the sites, because we will have to document a lot of historical facts about these sites. And also, we wouldn't refuse your funds because we need a lot of it to be able to travel to all these places in order that we'll be able to accomplish the noble objective that we've set ourselves. Thank you very much.